The movie begins with two ex-convicts, Tom and Vic, stealing an unfamiliar van from a parking lot. They immediately take the van to a nearby junkyard to swap the license plates. In their pursuit, these men make a quick stop at a hardware store to buy drills, ropes, locks, and other supplies. Upon returning to an abandoned apartment, they soundproof a room and equip it with materials they bought. Additionally, they soundproof the stolen van and head to the woods to mark specific trees. After that, Tom and Vic change their attire and assemble a bag containing handcuffs, ropes, clothes, and a gun. And with everything prepared, they patiently wait outside a building while wearing masks to conceal their identities. Suddenly, a woman named Stella walks by their vehicle, and the convicts quickly start chasing her. They eventually catch up to the woman and forcefully take her to the van while she screams in desperation. Once inside, they restrain Stella with handcuffs and also bind her legs. When they arrive at the apartment, Stella is led to a room that had previously been made soundproof, and she's tightly bound to the bed. Using scissors, the kidnappers remove her clothing and take pictures before forcefully making her change into different clothes. Stella feels uneasy and trapped, but she's powerless to escape her situation. Eventually, Tom and Vic leave the room, leaving Stella behind while she cries out for help. Shortly after, one of the kidnappers demands that Stella provide her father's email address and cell phone number. But when she hesitates to cooperate, Vic slaps her face and repeats the question. Desperate to regain her freedom, Stella quickly gives them all the requested information. And once the kidnappers obtain the details, they gag her again and leave the room. Outside, Vic notices the visible unease on Tom's face and reassures him that things will turn out in their favor. He then sends Stella's pictures to her father, demanding $2 million for her safe return. Afterward, Vic leaves the apartment and instructs Tom to keep a close eye on Stella. And when he returns, he brings 5 disposable phones with him and informs Tom that they haven't received a response yet. And after fixing the phones, the two kidnappers enter the room where Stella's held and offer her water. Before removing the gag, Vic warns Stella to stay quiet and assures her that they don't intend to harm her, although they are prepared to if necessary. However, Stella defies his request by shouting as soon as the gag is removed. Vic swiftly covers her mouth, reminding her that no one can help her, so Stella nods in understanding and remains silent. Following this, Vic puts the gag back on her mouth and instructs her to use hand signals when she needs to use the bathroom. Immediately, she gestures to him, but she's surprised when the kidnappers give her a container instead of a bathroom. Reluctantly, Stella urinates in the container while still being held down on the bed. Meanwhile, as Tom delivers a meal for both of them, Vic notices his distress and urges Tom to prioritize his health by eating well. However, Tom adamantly rejects the suggestion, frustrating his partner. Concerned about his well-being, Vic forcefully feeds Tom despite his clear refusal. After that, Vic discusses the meticulous planning required and ponders over the potential future of their plan, which could result in lifetime imprisonment. After finishing his meal, Vic exits the room, but he occasionally checks on Stella to ensure the gag is still in her mouth. Later, Tom goes to check on Stella in the room, and she signals that she needs to use the restroom. He then unlocks the restraints, but keeps his gun pointed at her, instructing the girl to use the bucket. Stella then requests Tom for privacy, and he complies. However, as soon as he turns around, she seizes the opportunity to grab the bucket and strikes him on the head. The gun falls to the ground, and Stella quickly grabs it, demanding that Tom release her. He then tries to approach her to seize the weapon, but Stella fires at him and misses. Amid the chaos, Stella unveils Tom's true identity by removing his mask, which surprises her. They both struggle for a while, and eventually Tom overpowers her, leading him to restrain her back to the bed. He warns Stella about the danger they face if their relationship or recent events are discovered by Vic. And later that day, Vic informs that Stella's dad has refused to pay the ransom, but he still remains confident that the man will change his mind. The next morning, Tom and Vic come into the room and set up cameras, informing Stella that her father refuses to pay the ransom. Vic explains their plan to create a live video of amputating Stella's pinky finger in order to pressure her father into paying. He mentions that the finger can be reattached if her father pays, and assures her that they will use sedatives to minimize pain. After removing the gag, Stella tearfully pleads with her father to save her. She apologizes for their past fights and even reveals that she's pregnant. Just as Vic is about to cut her finger, Tom interrupts, believing that the video alone is enough and injuring her further would be excessive. After watching the video, the kidnappers go back to Stella's room with food. However, when Vic is about to feed Stella, she asks Tom to do it instead. Vic declines and continues feeding her, reassuring her that the situation will be resolved soon. And while they're eating, both Tom and Stella notice the bullet cover they saw earlier. Tom cautiously tries to grab it, but Vic becomes suspicious. However, after finishing her meal, Stella accidentally drops her spoon near the bullet cover, and Tom quickly picks it up. Tension rises as Vic questions Tom about his suspicious behavior, and Tom confesses to feeling a bit nervous. Later, Tom goes to the restroom in an attempt to get rid of the bullet. He then tries to flush it down the drain, but is unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Vic becomes suspicious when he sees Tom taking a long time and confronts him outside the bathroom, demanding that he come out immediately. But when Tom refuses, Vic forcefully opens the door. In a hurry, Tom quickly swallows the bullet casing before he has a chance to see it. Failing to notice anything suspicious, Vic attributes Tom's strange behavior to adrenaline and mentions that he used to experience it frequently. He then reveals his plan to send the video to Stella's father, who will make the payment in a heartbeat. After boasting about their future freedom and wealth, Vic leaves, and Tom seizes the opportunity to check the calendar on his computer. He tries to calculate how long it's been since he broke up with Stella to determine if the child is his. Frustrated and angry, he confronts Stella, accusing her of lying and faking the pregnancy. However, Stella adamantly admits that she is indeed pregnant with his child, but Tom doubts her honesty. She then urges Tom to feel her belly to confirm her claim, but he feels nothing, further fueling his anger. He then asks Stella why she never informed him about the pregnancy if it's true, but Stella accuses him of being irresponsible and absent when she needed him, explaining that she decided to raise the baby on her own after he was arrested. Frustrated by this response, Tom also expresses his disappointment in Stella for not visiting him in prison. Shockingly, he confesses that it was his plan to kidnap Stella, realizing how wealthy her father is. However, Tom is still skeptical of her pregnancy, so Stella asks him to check her phone, where he'll find a report confirming her pregnancy. But he hesitates to turn on the phone, fearing that it could be traced by the police and reveal their location easily. Suddenly, Stella chokes on her vomit and calls for Tom's help. Now, Tom immediately rushes to her aid, and in the closeness of the moment, they share a passionate kiss. However, just as they're about to get intimate, Stella handcuffs him to the bed and escapes the room. Unfortunately, she realizes that the entire building is locked and that she doesn't have the keys. She frantically grabs one of the burner phones and calls the police, but is unable to provide the location. Just then, it dawns on her that Tom might have the keys, which had fallen during their struggle. Meanwhile, in the room, Tom struggles to pick up the keys with his feet when Stella re-enters the room. Just as she bends down to pick them up, he seizes the opportunity to free himself from the handcuffs and kicks her against the wall, rendering her unconscious. He then carries Stella back to the bed and ties her up once again. Meanwhile, Vic arrives home with good news. Stella's father has agreed to pay the ransom, and all that remains is determining the location of the trade-off. So Vic and Tom start fantasizing about the life they'll have with the newfound wealth. The next day, when Tom goes outside to prepare the van, he discovers Stella's pregnancy record, finally confirming her claims. And as they get ready to transfer Stella to the boathouse, Vic stumbles upon the burner phone. He then checks the call history, only to discover a call to the police. Stella denies having any knowledge of how it ended up in her pocket, emphasizing that it would have been impossible for her to obtain the phone. Naturally, Vic accuses Tom of giving Stella the phone and questions why she refuses to speak. Frustrated, he angrily punches Stella in the face. Furthermore, Vic is surprised that she knows Tom's name and paces around in frustration. And during this, Vic discovers a bullet lodged in the wall. He interrogates Stella again, and this time, she explains everything, revealing that she's Tom's ex-girlfriend. Meanwhile, Tom returns to the house unaware of the recent events. On the other hand, Vic restrains Stella once again and asks Tom why he chose Stella specifically. But to his surprise, Tom defends himself by claiming it was just a suggestion and that it was actually Vic who selected her. Meanwhile, Vic senses that something is amiss, especially because of Stella's strange behavior. Moreover, his trust in Tom begins to waver, and he demands that Tom no longer hide any secrets. But Tom reassures Vic of his honesty, and they tie up Stella and render her unconscious to transport her to their intended location. Upon reaching there, the convicts carry an unconscious Stella to a boathouse and restrain her with handcuffs. Vic insists that Tom accompanies him to collect the money, deviating from the original plan for Tom to stay with Stella. They then drive to a location farther than the boathouse, park the van, and walk into the woods. But when Tom goes to get the money, he realizes that it's not there. Just then, Vic proudly reveals that he gave Stella's father a new location. And suddenly, he pulls out his gun and aims it at Tom, who pleads for his life, mentioning that Stella is pregnant with his child. He reminds Vic of their past encounter in prison and how he protected him. In a moment of weakness, Tom overpowers Vic and manages to escape, but he's shot from a distance. Despite his injury, Tom swiftly disappears before Vic can catch up with him. Eventually, Tom manages to hide behind a tree while he bleeds profusely from his bullet wound. Back at the boathouse, Stella wakes up and realizes she's in an unfamiliar place. She cries out for help, but as expected, no one comes to rescue her. Meanwhile, Vic proceeds to the designated location and retrieves the money, experiencing great joy at the sight of such a huge amount. That night, he goes to Stella to administer a lethal injection, assuring her it will be painless. Then, just as Vic is about to inject her, Tom enters the room and strikes him with a rod. However, before he can cause more harm, Vic shoots him down in rage. Unexpectedly, Stella intervenes by kicking Vic, causing him to fall to the ground. And since his gun drops a few inches away from his partner, Tom seizes the opportunity to pick it up and shoots Vic dead. He then retrieves the key and hands it to Stella, granting her freedom. However, while he's liberated, Tom's condition worsens, and eventually he ends up losing his life as well. Shortly after, Stella leaves the cottage and heads towards their car. Much to her surprise, she finds her father's money inside the vehicle. And in the end, Stella drives away from the woods, determined to use the money she obtained to start a fresh life for herself and her child.